Have you ever woken up in a stranger's dollhouse after an insane party with giant Viking pirates that involved drinking large amounts of absinthe? Well, you don't have to go through that, since you can just live vicariously through the Straw Hats' misadventures, because that's pretty much what happened to them. We're still not too sure how they got into this miniature version of Elbaf. Maybe the mysterious sun god got us into their home with nothing more than a white van and a big bag of candy. Or perhaps the Straw Hats were simply chasing ghosts and aliens and ended up here. The Straw Hats were drunk out of their minds and hallucinating, so really, anything's possible. Pushing aside how the Straw Hats got here though, who is this mysterious sun god? We already know that Luffy is the sun god, so they have to be a fake one, right? Well, that doesn't have to be the case. Given the fact that Sun God Nika stems from a legend, there is a small 1% chance that this is a legitimate descendant of the old sun god. Or perhaps this is someone pretending to be the sun god to subject all of Elbaf to their mischievous plans. Enslavement, torture, death to humans, they won't stop until I actually don't believe that's going to be the case. I actually think that this mysterious sun god is quite the opposite of evil. I think they're actually just a massive loner. So, taking all the details of the last chapter and this chapter into account, this quote sun god has built themselves a perfect diorama that mirrors Elbaf pretty well. From the fake Yggdrasil tree all the way to the miniature clothing that the Straw Hats are wearing. This mysterious giant put in a lot of time and care into the details. Even the Lego blocks, which I once thought was due to the work of a devil fruit, can be seen scattered around their room. This project of theirs took real effort to pull off. Why would they do this? Why would they go so far to recreate Elbaf? I think it's because, just like Kuma and Bonnie, this person is a huge fan of Sun God Nika. They aren't trying to usurp the title of Sun God from Luffy, they're simply pretending to be them in a playful manner. I'd equate this to a little kid pretending to be Superman or Batman. The idea that this is the case isn't too far outside the realm of possibility, since we do know that Elbaf traditionally worships the sun god. We've seen this in Big Mom's flashback with the existence of the Winter Solstice Festival, with Dory and Brogy coming to Egghead and announcing that they're there to pick up the sun god, and even with Vegapunk's message in chapter 1114, where he says that Sun God Nika is an Elbaf fable. Sun God Nika is someone that pretty much everyone on the giant island should know about and revere. This mystery giant could potentially be such a fan that they put on their sun god costume that they purchased from Wish.com and decided to rule over fake Baf, just like how the real Sun God Nika would rule over Elbaf. This silly explanation would actually tie in quite well with the title of the chapter in which they're introduced, since 1128 is aptly named Role-Playing Game. This mystery giant is simply role-playing as Sun God Nika. While what they're doing may seem cruel on the surface, with them having humans trapped in a cage and all, we have to remember that we have no idea how we got here in the first place. During the post-Egghead Island celebration, we drank copious amounts of green fairy and blacked out. For all we know, the Straw Hats present just broke into this poor person's playhouse or signed up to be here, which could be the same with all the other inhabitants of Fake Baf. Perhaps they signed up for this experience, just like how in real life, people sign up to do live-action roleplays, or LARPing. What really stuck out to me as odd was that when the Straw Hats broke through the cage mirror initially, the residents of Fake Baf seemed more shocked than excited. If they were truly held here against their will, then they would have a very different reaction to this development. Not to mention, but these residents also seem to be well taken care of, since Mr. Grass Biker offered food to the Straw Hat crew. All they'd have to do is go to their town and ask for some. So if this mysterious fake sun god is a benevolent person, why are they currently chasing the Straw Hats, and why did their shrine guardians, the snake, rats, and crow, attack the crew? I think this is all just a big misunderstanding. I can almost understand their frustration to an extent with the crew right now. Imagine you spent weeks getting ready for a big event. You bought the custom cage, you bought the fake Sun God Nika outfit, built the castles, made all the clothing for the miniature people, grew a fake Yggdrasil tree, and got all of your human friends together for a big game night, only to have your most recent guests of the party end up destroying it all, and are seen attacking your pets right as you open the door. I don't think there's anyone out there who wouldn't be upset at these antics. If I came home and someone was fighting my cat or God forbid eating him, I'd damn near turn into the king of hell and send them there personally. One question that does arise from this hypothetical of the mystery giant being a huge Sun God Nika fan is, why did they not realize that Luffy was the sun god when he obviously was seen by them while in his Gear 5th form? And why does their cosplay of the sun god look so off from what Luffy's Gear 5th form looks like? Dorian Broggie instantly knew what he was based off of his most recent bounty poster. So why doesn't this giant know? Well, it ties back to what I mentioned earlier. This mystery giant is a giant loser. I don't believe this giant actually goes outside often or even knows much about the outside world, and as such, they don't know much about Sun God Nika either. When you think about it, why would a giant build a replica of Elbaf if they already live in Elbaf? Living out their dream and role-playing as the sun god could be the reason here, but what if it's because they are the one who's actually trapped in this scenario? This replica of Elbaf reminds me of Bonnie's childhood when she wished she could visit many different islands with their dad and showed him pictures of those places in books. Or back in Tequila Wolf, where Sauron, an anime-only character, drew pictures of all the different islands she wanted to visit and shared it with Robin. Or when Shirahoshi longed to go to the sea forest, but was trapped in her mermaid tower. Perhaps this mystery giant is a kindred spirit in that sense. They want to explore and see Elbaf, but they simply can't for whatever reason. So instead, they visit it vicariously through this playhouse that they've created. This character, this fake sun god, could be another princess or girl in distress. Yeah, I know, this isn't the most original plot point, but I still think it's a pretty fun one to play with. So the leap into why I believe this character is a woman is pretty shoddy, I will admit. But we do see that in their very first panel, they are wearing heels. But to be fair, heels aren't subjected to only women, so that's not enough to go on. So what else do we know? We also know that they are adept at sewing clothing and have befriended a ton of animals. So maybe that's a hint at their femininity. Ooh, wow, this bit comes off as a bit sexist, huh? One silly question that came up when we first saw Nami here in Fake Bath was, who dressed her up? While Nami could have done it herself while under the influence of the Green Fairy, there is a chance that someone else dressed her while she was sleeping. If a man did this to her, then there'd definitely be some issues that would have risen up in that scenario from a moral standpoint. But if it was a woman that dressed Nami while she was sleeping, then this wouldn't be too big of an issue. Now, going back to this person taming animals and potentially being a princess, I think this all could fall in line with the story of Snow White. Snow White originated in the early 1800s as a German fairy tale, until it was later retold by Disney in 1937, and that marked the birth of the first Disney princess. The reason I equate this sun god to Snow White is for a few key reasons. Firstly, it would explain perfectly why this giant has such an affinity with animals. In the movies and books, Snow White is often depicted as a lustrous of sorts. She sings to the animals of the forest and they flock to her in enamorment. Perhaps that is how the sun god was able to tame all the beasts we've seen thus far. Gotta admit, it would be quite fitting having a fake sun god sing songs to obtain allies. It'd be akin to how the real sun god emits the drums of liberation. It would also explain why Chopper was getting special treatment and wasn't initially put inside the fake bath cage. The Snow White story has a lot of iconic moments known by all: the deadly apple scene, the dwarf scenes, the magic mirror scene, and not to mention the deer scene. Perhaps the sun god trying to tame Chopper is a nod to Snow White and how she often befriends wild deer. And now lastly, if all of my assumptions are correct, and this giant princess isn't allowed into the outside world, then this connection to Snow White could explain it. In the story, Snow White is hunted by the evil queen for being so goddamn beautiful. The queen sent assassins to finish her off on almost a daily basis. Perhaps that is what's happening here. Maybe this mysterious giant princess can't go outside because their life is endangered. Just like how Shirahoshi was trapped inside the mermaid tower, because her life was constantly under threat by Vanderdecken. In this instance, the evil queen would actually just be the world government and celestial dragons. A nice parallel here would be that just like how Shirahoshi can control sea kings, this giant princess can control colossal land animals. Another interesting connection between this mystery giant and Shirahoshi would be their size. Shirahoshi inherited the powers of Poseidon at birth and got the title Mermaid Princess. We aren't sure if her size plays a role when it comes to her being Poseidon, but she is the largest mermaid in the kingdom by far. In 1128, the Shrites mention that this fake sun god is actually quite large when compared to other giants. So perhaps this princess has the same traits that Shirahoshi does, and because of their animal powers, they are larger than normal. And no, I'm not saying that this princess is an ancient weapon. I actually believe that she may just be from a long forgotten race. A race that has, time and time again, been heavily sought after. I believe that this fake sun god Snow White RPG wannabe is actually an ancient giant. Not much is known about them. Our only reference points would be Ors and Ors Jr. The existence of Ors Jr. present day and Ors Sr.'s death 500 years ago must mean that this tribe currently exists somewhere in the world, but in a limited capacity. So if that's the case, why not here on Elbaf? Elbaf would be the safest place for the ancient giants since, to our knowledge, the world government doesn't have any footholds here. As far as why the world government would want this ancient giant princess, it would simply be so that they could experiment on her. We saw that back on Punk Hazard, the world government were researching how to create artificial ancient giants, and that's how we ended up with the numbers in Wano. They failed, and that's why the numbers are just a big pack of buffoons. With that embarrassing failure in their history books, it's not hard to imagine that they'd want to capture a live one to experiment with firsthand. An interesting tie between all of this would be how the ancient giants seem to resemble Oni, since they have horns like Kaido and Yamato. With Oni being Japanese in nature, it would make sense if the ancient giants had some Japanese traits sprinkled into their characters. Ors Jr., for example, not only wore a straw hat that Ace learned how to make back in Wano, but as revealed in Ors' Vivid card, his favorite food is onigiri, which is an amazing Japanese snack. Seriously, you guys should try onigiri if you have a chance. So regarding this mystery giant, an interesting nuance that can be seen in their manner of speaking is that when they enter the room, they scream out, "My beloved shrine." This right here is lost in the English translation, but the way they refer to themselves here is written with the term Sesha, which is how the samurai of Wano typically speak. Another reason why I want to rope in the Oni-Japanese connection is because this could actually lead us to the final supernova we have yet to meet, Arouge. As a community, we've kind of come to the consensus that we will meet Arouge here on Elbaf. But how? And why? Well, it could be through this female ancient giant. I don't want to go too heavy on Arouge speculation since we don't know too much about him, so we'll keep it down to the brass tacks. Arouge's ship has always struck me as odd. The man is from Burka, a sky island, so why does his ship have the Japanese name Hanjimaru, and an Oni as the figurehead? I'm not trying to say that there's anything wrong with him sporting Wano culture, but it is an interesting choice. Well, if the ancient giant race have ties to the Oni and Wano culture, then this could be how he's reintroduced into the story, as someone that knows of the ancient giants. Arouge could be someone who's protecting that ancient race. One final hint that this mysterious character could be an ancient giant has to do with the small fact that when Luffy uses Gear 5th when fighting the snake, his helmet actually joins with his head, and it makes it seem as if he has Oni-ancient giant horns. So to sum up this entire wacky theory, the Sun God we met in chapter 1128 is actually a good person. They are a character that's inspired by Snow White and are another princess we're going to befriend. Just like Shirahoshi, they also have control over colossal beasts and are being hunted down by outside forces and are forced to live in seclusion. That is why they live vicariously through the mock version of Elbaf. They love role-playing as the Sun God because maybe the Sun God will liberate them one day from isolation, and also because the Sun God is rad as hell. They're bigger than your average giant because they are an ancient giant. And to top it all off, Arouge might be connected in this instance in some way. But of course, those are just my thoughts on it. I do still like the idea that this could be Loki, the man marked by flames, or even just some brand new giant entirely. As far as how I came to this conclusion and cooked up this theory, it's simply because time and time again, we've met princesses all throughout the story, so I really don't think Elbaf is going to be any different. Either way though, no matter who this giant is, I can totally see them being a little bit of an outcast. Because Saul did say during the Ohara flashback that the giants of Elbaf are savages. They just love fighting. Well, if that's the case, then why is this loser inside their house playing with dolls? You know, making miniature clothing. If they were a true giant of Elbaf, then they should be outside fighting wars. So yeah, because of their hobby here, I can totally see them being an outcast just like Saul. You know, because last we saw Saul, he was living, well, we don't know if he was living there, but he did have a cabin in the middle of the woods, aside from all the other giants. So I could see this giant right here, the Sun God, being a kindred spirit. Perhaps the warrior life isn't fit for this Sun God, and that is why they instead stay at home playing RPGs. If this is the case, then I could see this being great for Usopp's character growth even. Maybe Usopp has to inspire a giant to live more like a giant of Elbaf typically should. Maybe Usopp looks at them and says, hey, you can win this battle, right? Maybe he flips the tables onto them. You know how Luffy said, oh, Usopp, you could have beat them, right? Maybe Usopp will look at this character and say, hey, maybe you should stop playing with dolls and just go outside. That being said though, thank you so much for watching this video again. I just ended up making this theory on a whim because it kind of made sense to me at least. It felt very One Piece in a way. But of course, my thoughts right here are just one of the many of thousands of theories about this topic. So if this ends up being wrong next week, it's no skin off my bone. That's just a part of the game. Please though, let me know what you guys thought about this video down below. Did you agree with some parts? Did you dislike some parts? And also, what are your own theories as to who this mysterious sun god actually is? I would love to hear any and all of your thoughts down below. Thank you so much again for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Signing out.